powerful. Yeah, it's powerful. Well, yeah, they're loving it, or they're excited. They're fired up.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Spill the Beans. Today I'm sitting down with my good buddy Pat Precourt. Pat Precourt is one of the utmost experts on personal development, mindset, behavioral patterns of human behavior, right? And I've known him for several years now. He's made a huge impact on my life and a huge impact on many, many high achievers' lives that are good friends of mine. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Let's go match up with Pat right now. Mr. Patrick Precourt, appreciate
brother.
you, dude. I'll tell you what, man. We've had a lot of conversation before this, and obviously we've known each other for probably 5-6 years now, right? And every time I sit down with you, it's just like such a good conversation, such good dialogue, and there's only a handful of people that I really look up to in the space, especially in the personal development mindset type of space, and you are by far one of those top ones. So just a huge honor, one, to have you here, two, to have you in the community. I'm excited for your Legacy Wealth Academy masterclass too, and I want to dive into like all that stuff. So
Nice.
let's rock and roll.
Yeah, and truly honored to be here. You know, I've watched your growth over these last 5 years, dude, and you're a leader in the industry. And not, what you do is awesome, but it's how you do it and why you do it that's so impressive and sets such a track record for others to follow. So honored to be here and honored to share.
Oh man, I appreciate that. It's a huge honor for you to receive that from you. So we were talking a little bit offline about all the things that you have going on, and I love the framework that you're setting the stage for Legacy Wealth Academy and for your masterclass. I want to get into that in a second. I want everybody to kind of know your backstory, because you've been in the industry for a long time, at a high volume for a long time, helped a lot of the leaders in the industry break through any sort of barriers and really increase their performance. And I see you as more of like a mindset, performance, achievement type of a coach. But how did you kind of find yourself into that space?
Sure. So the space I'm in right now is exactly what you said. And we use the word mindset a little generically. And I almost want to strip that away, because we got a pre-fixed paradigm of what that means.
Self-help.
Right? Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And I'm a very black and white, tangible guy. I don't like the gray, fluffy stuff in the middle, you know? So I like, all right, if we pull this lever and this lever, let's see the results we get. And human behavior is very much, it's ruthlessly predictable. And that's the space I play in. When somebody's...
Human behavior is the right way to label it.
Yeah. When somebody wants a result, we just look at the behaviors necessary to get the result, and then the constructs required to produce those behaviors on a consistent basis to get the result. So that's like the space I play in right now. But if we go all the way back to the late 90s, that's when I got involved in real estate investment. First deal, subject to, a lease option deal, which is super cool. Got me into a subject to deal. In the 2000s, we got into doing short sales early on, and it was way before short sales were like even a word. We're teaching realtors and customer service at banks what short sale meant. It's
wild.
Crazy back in that. Our very first short sale deal we did in about 10 minutes with customer service at the closing table, before they had departments for this stuff and regulations and bureaucracy. Is crazy, So in the 2000s, spent a lot of time in the short sale space. We did well over 1,000 transactions, built a big company around loss mitigation and all that kind of stuff. Got into education during that period of time too, and was a member of one of the largest real estate education companies in our country, and that went really well for many years. Retired that in 2013 to get into the space that I'm in right now, which is really closing the gap between where you are and what you're capable of becoming. And it came about this way. In our real estate education, we were teaching people the best education available at the time, and it was awesome. Yet not everybody was getting results. As a matter of fact, truth is, a small percentage of people were being really successful with the education we're giving them.
And you're giving them all the resources. You're giving them the insights, the knowledge, the connections. All they have to do is just put it kind of into work, but they're not doing it, right? And then you start reflecting on yourself. Like, what are we not giving them that they're not having success?
Yeah, and at the time, I didn't know what I know now. At the time, I would say, hey, listen, this is simple. your expertise, your knowledge, your capacity, plus your consistent behavior equals your results. And when you're not getting the results you want, you just go back, there's only two pieces to this formula. And likely it's not your knowledge or expertise. Likely it's your behavior, the consistent behavior that we got to look at. And that's what I now focus on, right? That's my expertise. Now, back in 2012, we opened a gym called The Cage, and there's a whole story behind it.
Yeah.
You ever buy something emotionally? Like just not even think about it, you make a spur of the moment. Well, this was then a business opening that we did emotionally. I looked at my coach, we had a little problem, our gym was shutting down. He goes, Pat, what do we do? And I emotionally went, well, we should open a gym.
Yeah.
Never thought about it.
Here's a solution, right? I'm an entrepreneur.
Didn't put any real thought into it. You know,
Yeah.
I said, listen, let's just open a little 3,000 square foot dojo. We'll get our boys and girls in there. We'll do our fighting in there, and life is good.
Mm-hmm.
And then upon thinking through it and, kind of going through the business side, I realized that there's a reason why dojo owners are broke, because the model sucks.
Yeah.
So I realized it needs more. It needs a whole fitness side too. And this 3,000 square foot grew to 15,000 square foot, and a ton of trainers and people. And anyways, we're in the gym business, right?
Yeah.
But here's an interesting thing about that whole process. And we've heard, from Steve Jobs, you look backwards, you get to see how dots connect,
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew this at the time. But the real purpose of that gym in my life had nothing to do with fitness or training or getting me to fight. My first cage fight at 42 years old had nothing to do with that, Timmy. It had to do with giving me a laboratory of real human beings to test a lot of the methodologies that I use in altering human behavior. Because when you think about it, the space of fitness, weight loss, fat loss, there's no industry that fails at a higher level than that industry.
I mean, that is like the epitome of the personal behavior world, right?
Yes.
If you can figure it out in that space, you can figure it out in finance, you can figure it out in relationships, you can figure it out everywhere else. Like, that is the cleanest, simplest, most stripped away, but like most obvious where people fail, right?
Yeah, and it has all the elements. People in there, they know what they want, they deeply desire it, they know how to get it. The losing weight is not, you don't have to be a really smart human being to figure that out.
Yeah.
Google will fill you in what you're missing there right now.
I bring in this many calories, how many do I burn, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's not
so
that
they
complex.
want the result, they know how to get it, but they can't produce a repeated behavior to get the result. And that's where I plug in, right? That space right there. And the gym became a laboratory for testing this out and understanding what does it take to get people to get those results.
Right.
And that's why at this day, at this time of this recording, people pay us an extraordinary amount of money to become part of our gym, and they're not paying for a nutrition plan, they're not paying for our equipment, they're not paying to become part of our team, they're paying for a result that they can't get on their own.
Right.
And that kind of brings us up to where we are today. I've built an entire organization, a company around providing these types of services for generally entrepreneurs, right, that have spent money, time, energy, effort, resources on learning and knowledge and expertise, but still don't have what they want, that thing that they went into it in the first place. I help them close that gap. And the cool thing about it, right, is that the tools, once you know them, you know them.
Yeah.
You get to use them and repeat them and apply them and teach your spouse and your kids and your team how to use the exact same tools. Because it's just not that hard once you grasp it and understand it.
Dude, the whole idea of such a simple formula that drives all results in your life, right? It's your knowledge and expertise plus your activities, your actions. What are you doing? How are you implementing those things equals your results. It's not more complex than that. It's simple, but it's not easy, right?
Exactly.
That's the whole Jim Rohn concept.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it's not easy. There's a plethora of information out there, an abundance of it, of the knowledge and expertise and insights. It's like, so it seems like the gap is typically in the actions, in the activities. So what does that conversation look like? How have you been able to bridge that gap with your gym clients in order to increase their actions, increase their productivity? Like, what are the hurdles that you've seen in that space, and how do you overcome those?
Yeah, so I'll give you guys some really good insight right now. And if you follow me, you'll hear a lot more about this, right? There's one thing that we cannot overcome, okay? And we can't outwork it, we can't outthink it, we can't out vision board it, we can't out mantra it, right? And that's our belief system. If we believe we can, we can. If we believe we can't, we can't. And people talk about mindset all the time, like, oh, and gurus talk about mindset. Well, if you change your mindset, if you fix your mindset, it's like the Holy Grail fixes everything.
Yeah.
Well, here's the truth. You can't change your mindset. Your mind is set, but it's set based on your beliefs down here. Let's go back to like the 1950s, 52, 54, right? When that dude Dan ran the 4-minute mile, right?
Yeah.
Up until that point, the mindset was a human being could not run a 4-minute mile. People's minds were set, right? And when he achieved it, it opened up people's minds to believe something different. So the mindset was altered. It was set up here now. And that allowed others to start achieving what no one up to this point in entire history had ever done, right?
And then there was like 12 people who did it in the following 12 months or something like that, right?
Crazy,
6 months. Yeah.
Crazy. So when we talk about like things that we experience as symptoms as entrepreneurs, procrastination, distraction, excuses, those are all exactly that. They're just symptoms of something underneath. But here's the truth of it. Every one of those, right, like a procrastination, is founded in a behavior that you're not executing because you don't generally believe that the behavior will get you the results that you want. If you did, you wouldn't do it. If I said, hey, Timmy, drink this in one shot right now and you'll lose 10 pounds, absolutely guaranteed without exception. If I could get you to believe that, you would knock that thing back without exception. You would.
Yeah. Right.
And I talk about like in the real estate investment world to entrepreneurs who are trying to get in, who are trying to get their first deal. I said, this is simple. If you get on a phone and call 300 people a day for 5 days in a week, by the end of the week, you'll earn yourself a $15,000 check. You will. But guess what? After the no's and the swearing and the angry responses, one day in they're beat up. Second day, they're a little slower. They didn't quite do 300. Third day, they're barely picking up the phone, right? Because the connection between phone calls and $15,000, they don't believe it. However, if I employed that person, I said, it goes like this. Your job every day is just to dial 300 names, and Friday at 3 o'clock, if you've done it for 5 days in a row, I write you a check for $15,000. That's your paycheck for the week. Every day there is no burden. They just make the calls because they see the connection. The belief has been established.
Because it's an easy connection to make. It's easier. There's multiple steps in leading to the goal, leading to the result. If you focus on the activity, that is what drives the end result. And that's where that disconnect is made, right?
Yeah. So another piece to this, right? We've got to be inspired by the reward. Delayed gratification, but focused on the task at hand.
Yeah.
And what happens is we tend to want immediate gratification in everything we do, which means, well, a lot of the work we do every day does not produce immediate gratification. Generally, if it does, it's just not giving us that much gratification.
Right.
It's a short-term fix. Things that matter take time, and that's just how the world's laid out.
100%.
Right? But when we get hung up on needing the immediate gratification, which quite frankly is the definition of mediocrity. We'll only do the things that produce an immediate result, like, no, I'm not going to diet, I'm going to eat this piece of cake right now, right? Because I get this immediate reward from the sugar and the satisfaction of the cake. Well, guess what? You'll never have that body down the road because your need for immediate gratification.
Yep.
Does that all kind of make sense?
100%. Like the people who think on a longer term mindset of delaying the immediate gratification are the most successful people. Like Elon Musk. Elon Musk doesn't even think about a year down the road or 6. He thinks about 100 to 500 years down the road. And that's why he's blowing through belief barriers right now, because he has such a long-term mindset. And I think if everybody just sat down and they said, hey, is this the best decision that I can make long-term? Not right now, long-term, in the next 12 months, right? Hey, I'm out at a party and there's a bunch of girls and, should I have fun tonight or should I think about long-term for the next 12 months?
Yeah.
You're going to make a better decision, right? Should I eat this thing today or should I think about where I'm going to be in the next 12 months? It makes things easier and it takes that, I don't know, maybe emotional urgency or emotional kind of pull away from it, and it makes it much more factual of what the impact's going to be, if that makes sense. So how do you change that belief system? How do you
So yeah, no,
focus
I
on
get
the activity?
Yeah. So how do we do something where we want the result, and let's just use weight loss, right? Now, I use a perfect example.
Yeah.
And this goes back a couple years. And I don't work in my gym. It's operationally all set. I go in there, I hang out, and I play, right? I hang out with our people. Or I'll go and fix a problem, which is a stuck client. So I get a call from a trainer. Says, Pat, this guy, he wants to run a 5K in 6 months. He's like 330, 340 pounds, hasn't done anything in 20 years.
Yeah.
He's 40 years old, and I'm stuck. He's not there. So I go in, right, and I talk to this guy, and I ask him a really powerful question, right? Now, he had all the reason to run it because his wife was going to do a charity, and he wants to be there for her. So his why was there. So
That's great.
why is a good piece, but it's not the only
Yeah.
piece. And I asked him a very important question. This is something, if anybody's listening here and has a goal, right, that you have not been able to achieve, it's a question we've got to get to the truth on. And I look at him just like I'm looking at you. I said, Timmy, answer this as honest as you can, because it's going to determine whether or not you ever run that 5K.
Yeah.
Do you believe you can run the 5K in 6 months? And he paused, and it was hard for him to answer. He goes, no. He goes, Pat, everything I've done up to now, I've tried everything, nothing's worked. I've tried everything and nothing's worked. I said, Tim, thanks. That's our truth. And from the truth, we can create change.
Yep.
When we lie to ourselves and we don't get to our truth, we can't change what happens next. I said, perfect. Now this next part will answer your question. He set a goal for himself that was at way up here above the clouds.
Right.
Yep. It's there, but he can't see it. He can't feel it. It's not real to him. He doesn't believe in it. Now picture a ladder going up to the clouds, right? My job then is to build rungs on the ladder. I said, all right, forget about 6 months, forget about 5K. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to tell you this in advance. I'll never assign you anything that you can't do or that will harm you. With that, all I need from you is a commitment being whatever it takes, no matter what. And that's a word I share with people all the time because rarely do we truly commit. We say we'll do things, but rarely do we commit. Like no matter, like if I break my leg, I'm still going to show up and do this. Okay? And I said, can you walk 1 mile a day for the next 5 days? He goes, yes, Pat, committed. Now watch the process. That's just the first rung on the ladder. Okay? And our human psychology is such that by day 3 on Wednesday or Thursday, you know where our sight's going? To the next rung. Because we're starting and we're like, I got this.
Well, what I've seen is like if you've never done it before, it's hard to see even the first rung, right? Seeing somebody else run the 4-minute mile, now there's a borrowed belief system. Now I can borrow belief because if they can do it, maybe there's a chance I could do it, right? And then if I did it once, it's really powerful. If I did it once, I could do it again.
Yeah.
If I did it once this much, maybe I could do it a little bit more, right? And there's study after study of like, if you set a goal too high above what anybody's ever achieved before, it doesn't motivate them. It actually demotivates them, where they're like, I'll never hit that, and exactly what you're talking about. And so you want to set goals like these tiny achievements, right, that really create the momentum. All these people want to come into Commercial Empire, my real estate program, and say, hey, I want to buy only 100-unit buildings. All right, how many do you own right now? Well, I own my house. Well, like, let's get the momentum. Let's buy a rental, right? Then let's buy a duplex. Then let's get things going. And a lot of these other people, the coaches and stuff in the commercial real estate world, they're like, no, we only buy 70 units and bigger. You don't want anything under 7. I'm like, no, you will look for those, and then you're going to go up against a guy like me who's buying bigger buildings, and you'll never have a chance to have a serious sit down with a seller or a broker or a banker and get that deal done. You need to build up the momentum. You need to build up that muscle of being able to do some small deals, and then that is going to give you the confidence to go in and sit down at the table and be able to take down these. But like, let's organically grow it, right? It's one rung at a time. Getting the momentum built up is more important. Those tiny victories build up the confidence to then achieve massive and amazing things.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. You're rebuilding the belief in yourself. And for a lot of us who've made commitments to ourselves in the past, New Year's resolutions, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to have a better relationship, I'm going to make more money, and then we never fulfill those promises to ourselves, we lose faith in our own commitments to ourselves. And that's the confidence you're talking about. When we do these smaller ones, and make no mistake, they're not settling for less. They're on the same ladder, moving in the exact same direction you got to go.
Yeah.
They're just giving you an extra step. And to your point, Without that step there, guess what? You can't reach the next rung. You've got to earn
Great
the
point.
right to get to that next rung.
100%. Great point.
Yeah, and there's what I call a discovery process, Timmy. You know, we say you need a certain amount of knowledge to get going, and you need a ton of action. A lot of people get stuck in here. I need to know more. I need more resources. I need more connections. I need more expertise. But the truth is, what they need can only be gotten in the execution. Those lessons that they think they need are not available until they go, right? This is like, I use this analogy of GPS, right? And I'm sure you've done this too. You use a GPS, you go out at night, you go to like, say an event somewhere and a party or whatever, and you come to go home, and you hit go home, and you're like, all right, GPS, do I go left or right out of the parking lot? Help me out here.
Yeah, and they're like, it can't really find you.
Right, because we're not taking any action. Now picture all of these satellite gods up there like, Tim, I got you, but you gotta go first.
Yeah.
I got you covered, brother, but you gotta go. And we sit there like, well, I don't wanna make the wrong turn. Well, no, it doesn't matter, because the second you go, you take a left. Maybe you should have gone right, but the satellite gods go, don't worry, great move, because I'm gonna correct your course and give you the next shortest path to your destination.
Yep.
And from that point on, every step you got, they'll react and respond and give you more insight, more feedback.
But if you don't step, they don't step.
Boom. And that's what happens. People like, no, I need more. Like, no, nothing's going to help you unless you go first. That's how this world, that's how this plays out, you know? And is there a little risk? Of course there is, right? There's risk and reward. That's world.
But it's little risk, you know?
Yes.
In the grand scheme of things, it's very little risk compared to not moving and what your life could look like if you don't move. And we've seen that picture many, many times of just unfulfilled, unmotivated, just standard mediocrity. And that, to me, I think it's easier understanding these little steps that achieve extraordinary results. It makes it easier to be extraordinary than it is to actually be ordinary.
Yeah, yeah.
It is hard to be ordinary. It's hard to be ordinary for the next 40, 50 years of your life, your adult life, working at something you don't want to do, not being fulfilled, not being happy. That's a fucking difficult lot to live, right? Versus doing these minor, little, simple steps to become extraordinary. It's easier to become extraordinary and then do amazing things, because that momentum, those little victories will grow, they will compound, and it's easier to be extraordinary than it is to be ordinary. It's like that philosophy came to me over the past like 3 months or so, and I'm like, damn, it's easier to be extraordinary than it is to be ordinary.
Yeah.
You know,
painful
because of these little steps.
Yeah. So there's a group of people that say, yeah, but I'm a little more risk adverse, right? And that risk and fear kind of going the same. This is what I share with people in that concept, right? How old were you when you had your first child?
29.
Okay. Did you know everything about being a dad?
Knew nothing. I couldn't believe they gave me my kid day 2. And they're like, all right, here you go. I was like, I need instructions.
Right, but you looked at a book, you looked at a couple videos, all that kind of stuff. But were you qualified to be a dad?
I mean, I made probably not, right? I never had any experience.
Hell no, there's nothing on our resume, nothing that qualifies us to be a dad. But we step up and we learn in the fire, right? Because what we need to know cannot be learned in a book.
Yeah.
It can only be learned at 5 in the morning when this baby's been up all night and your wife is crying, the baby's crying. You want to cry, but you can't cry. And you have no idea what to do, right? That's when we learn. This is no different. Right? If you want to expand in entrepreneurialism, in real estate, in getting in the commercial space, it's no different. We have to learn in the fire.
Yeah.
The most important lessons are not studied. They're not handed down. They're not something that we can practice on the side. We have to get in the middle of this stuff.
Agreed.
And be prepared, right, for what's coming from. The preparation just means that confidence enough to be like, all right, no matter what, I will not quit. And that's the only thing you got to know in advance, that no matter what happens, I'll grow from it.
And it's almost like you cannot be prepared, right, for what's about to happen. But then that happening to you then prepares you for that next level. You know what I mean?
That's how it happens.
It's so weird. Like, you're never prepared, but you taking the actions and doing the activity then does prepare you for that next. Like, I don't know. I had a dog, right? And that kind of didn't prepare me, but it kind of prepared me, right? It's like taking that action of just buying that first house. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm going to figure this out. I can't learn how to swim unless I get in the water, you know? You have to get in and try treading, and your head has to go underwater a little bit, and it's not fun. You can't prepare yourself for that, but then that helps you prepare for, you know, the forward stroke and the back stroke and all that. So it's like, you're never prepared. Doing the action then prepares you for whatever that next step is, though.
And I'll tell you, everybody listening to this, everybody's done this at least once in their life. Everybody's done it many times, but the one we can always point at is riding a bike, because this is the thing. When you rode a bike, you knew nothing about gravity or physics or speed or momentum or balance. You hadn't studied any of that stuff, and you need all of that stuff to ride a bike successfully, right? But you rode it, learned how to ride it through the actions of actually going forward. And guess what? Your dad or your mom could not
like
have taught
literally
you that.
going forward.
Yeah, they just push it. They don't even know how to teach you how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
Just like we don't know how to teach our kids how to ride a bike. All I know is I'm going to push you just like my parents pushed me. And you will fall, and you best get back on that bike and do it again and again and again, and you will figure it out, right? So a little kind of insight in that, right? Why that is so powerful. As kids, we have a different approach to life. We determine where we want to go, and then we determine the means we need to get there. As adults, we tend to look over our shoulder at how far we've come, the means that we have, and let that determine how far we can go. Now, if all of this got us to here, how far do you think it can get us? We run into a wall, and we talk ourselves into believing that this is as far as we can really go. We can take this tiny little step maybe, right? But God forbid, we can't set a goal out here, because look at my money, my time, my resources, how smart I am, that it just doesn't add up. It'll never get me there. The mind that has gotten us to where we're at is not the same mind that will get us to where we want to go, which means we've got to be able to let go of a part of who we are in order to become who we want to become.
What's funny is, like, I've seen people say, hey, similar to that, right? I'm thinking of examples as you're saying this. It's like, hey, I've saved up $100,000 or $300,000 in order to then, so that way I can go and invest in multifamily, right? And you know, these are easy real estate examples as you're thinking about things. And so they come to me and they're like, I got 300 grand. What can I buy for 300 grand? That creates a certain expectation in your mind of what you can buy, because you have those past resources, right? And because you've gotten to this point, you have 300 grand, you're like, oh, well, I can buy something for $1 million at a 70% loan to value, right? I would rather you come to me and say, starting from scratch, I got nothing. How can I go and raise money, millions of dollars, to then go buy tens of millions of dollars of real? I would rather somebody come to me with that mindset of the sky's the limit, right? Put all that past, everything you've done in the past, like, put it aside, because it creates a restriction on what you can then achieve. And that's what it seems like, you know, a small example of what you're talking about, of like, get that stuff out of your mind, because you're not going to reach that next level if you're only looking at your current resources. Yeah, no, that's a perfect example. And we'll add this one little piece in, right, that we just have to appreciate. It's kind of like a weakness of humans, right? And it's the idea of certainty. We thrive in certainty and we wallow in uncertainty. We despise a lack of knowing, right? And all fears are simply created out of not knowing. If we knew everything, there'd be nothing to be afraid of, right? So fear is anchored in just not knowing. And so equate that to a lack of uncertainty. And what I'm sharing with you, right, is that, we've got to lean in to not knowing, lean into uncertainty. How do you overcome that, right? Like, I'm thinking about my daughter, like, legitimately had a tooth hanging from a little thread out of her, like, dangling. She couldn't breathe without it swaying. She couldn't drink water, right? She had to spray water in her mouth with a straw because she was uncertain of what would happen if that little string in her mouth and that tooth came out, right? She was so distraught about it, crying her eyes out, because she didn't know. Like, how do you then let them know that it's going to be okay, right? It's not going to be difficult. Like, how do you create certainty that things are going to be okay when there's so much uncertainty surrounding that?
Yeah, so that one's a little more challenging, because there's so much emotion and a child involved, right? And it's really the fear of the pain, right? It's the not knowing. Now, your question is, how do you create certainty?
With the fear of the unknown, how do you break past that, right? It's so difficult, and our heads automatically go negative in everything that we think about in the future, right? And people focus on, hey, I'm not going to buy this property because it's $100,000 and it's a $100,000 risk. I might take a $100,000 loss on this thing.
Yeah.
And when they bring that to me, I think about it and I try to reframe it, right? I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, it's a piece of tangible real estate. If the market takes a total shit, you could still sell this thing for $95,000, right?
Yeah.
It's a $5,000 risk based on the reality of what the value is always going to be, no matter what happens economically or in the market cycle or with interest rates or whatever. You'll sell it for $90,000 to $95,000. You're really only taking a $5,000 to $10,000 risk. So that then takes, their total risk and kind of takes the quantifiable aspect of it and reduces it by 90%, And so I try to then reframe things. One of the things that I talk to a lot of my students about is like, dude, fear and faith are the same thing. Mm-hmm. They're both believing in something that is not true. Mm-hmm. Or no, not that not true, but that cannot be proved.
Not anchored in fact yet.
They're not anchored in fact, right? They're both believing in something that has not yet come to pass, not yet come to be. And the only difference is one is negative and one is positive. Mm-hmm. And it's in our head. And here's the beauty of that. It's in our head. We decide if it's positive or if it's negative. It's up to us because it's our story. So like, why do we all go negative? Why does everybody do that? And it's probably some sort of, 3 million years ago, as we've evolved, make sure the saber-toothed tiger doesn't jump on your back if you hear a stick break, and it's a survival technique. But the reality is it's just as easy to go positive.
So that question is easy. Why do we go negative? Because we're predisposed. We just believe that change goes from good to worse. Mm-hmm. That's our default setting until we interrupt that setting, right? And what I share with people is like, when you believe it goes from good to worse, you ask the wrong questions. What if I lose? What if I fail? What if I get judged? Right. You ask the wrong set of questions. And when you ask those questions, you immediately take all your chips and you slide them over to your opponent's cards. And I say, turn that around and start putting your chips on your own cards. Bet on you. And I'm not saying this false positivity crap, because that's just not where I'm at. I'm a realist. You see things for what they are. You make them no better than they are, but no worse than they are, with a lean towards optimism, which means pull your chips back on your cards and ask the right questions. What if I succeed? What if this works out? What if this goes better than planned? And start answering those questions. Because those questions will put different questions in your mind and starts creating an action plan, a path to take to produce those results. And you know this as well as I do, right? Wherever you put your focus, man, that's where your energy goes, and that's what we draw into our lives. Now, does that mean everything works out in our favor? Of course not, but here's the fallback, right? If you can commit to yourself, this one thing we said it earlier, that you will not quit no matter what. That means no matter what happens, it can be turned around into a growth opportunity. If you win as planned, excellent. If not, there's lessons in there that you need to know right now that the universe is delivering right now. Stop, listen, pay attention, understand them, and step forward with the new knowledge that you didn't have a minute ago. You're a better man, a better woman, a better investor for it in that moment. Does that make sense?
No, totally. It's like the simplest way, like these fears are a reaction to something in the environment, stories in our head, and it releases real chemical hormones in our body that then just frees you up. Not free, but freeze, like you can't move. And when you start focusing on the positive, again, not to be delusionally positive, but when you just start focusing on the positive, it puts things in perspective, right? Like there's a book that I read about, 5 questions to ask yourself before you die or something along those lines. And one of the stories in there was like, listen, here's how I made decisions. I looked at the best possible scenario in every situation, and I looked at the worst possible scenario in every situation. And I said, can I live with the worst? And is the reward worth the risk, right? And in most scenarios, our bodies and our hormones and our chemical reactions correlate fear with death, right? Fear of, oh, hey, the unknown equals death. Maybe that was the case in caveman days, right?
Which it generally was.
Which it was, totally. But today it's not, right? Today, fear, the same fear that we have over, I don't know, talking to somebody new at the bar, sitting down with somebody you don't know and networking with them at lunch, or sitting down on a podcast or speaking on a stage, or you correlate it with death. And it's not that bad, right? Like it's really not that. That's not what's going to happen. And if I go and invest and I lose money, what's the worst case scenario? You go to zero. There's at least a floor. You can you can claim bankruptcy if you need to, and you give a floor. Like, all right, what's the best case scenario? Financial freedom, right? Limitless income potential. Being able to travel to places I've never been to, being able to show your kids places that people only read about in magazines, being able to dig a financial fortress around your family that nothing can ever penetrate. And you're like, it's limitless upside, and there's a floor to the downside. Like, why wouldn't you pursue it? I think if you change the framework and you understand it that way, right, it makes a big, big difference.
Yeah. And you know what you brought up, I mean, this is like another conversation, but you're bringing up the, triggering a state of survival mode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you're right. There's a whole visual response by our body that will lock you down and trap you. When you believe you're under threat, and the mind can trigger the body to think that this big grizzly bear is about to kill you, when in fact you're just worrying about something that's never happened. Body responds the exact same way, and all these stress hormones are poured into our body, and our body responds because it thinks we have to physically defend ourselves. Fight, flight, or hide, right? That's how we try to respond. And our blood to certain organs is depleted as it goes to our muscles, and we can hear better, we can see better, and we get a little faster, but our immune system gets compromised. It puts our body in a tough spot for a short period of time so that it can physically survive. And you think we can, in that state, operate optimally in decision making and trying to quantify whether or not this opportunity is a good opportunity. We can't. We're done in the water. So to your point, right, we have to be a lot more realistic at the very beginning of that process, and don't make it like this is a doom or gloom environment. See it for what it is, no better, no worse. Knock out the emotion side of it. Go a little stoic on here, and just look at the deal, but no more of this what could happen going from good to worse.
Right.
Once you're in that survival mode and that parasympathetic nervous system is triggered, you're out of the game. Yeah, you're not a player anymore.
You do a great job of just creating the awareness, right? I think that's like that is the initial step in this whole process of just understanding the mind fuck that your mind is doing to yourself, right? And understanding that your mind is playing games against you, and then that way you can see it whenever it happens to you. You can then audit your thoughts, right? And react and respond to it in a better way. That whole personal awareness, social awareness, emotional intelligence is that first step in figuring this whole thing out. And now your mind can't play those games on you,
Exactly.
And so it's powerful, man. Every time I sit down with you, I get a ton of great insights. I love our conversations, and we just, it's a huge honor to have you here, man. It's a huge honor to have you as part of the Legacy family, and I'm just excited for your course. I'm going to sit down and watch it. I'm going to make sure my wife watches it. I'm going to have it to my kids and try to implement a lot of this stuff into their life. It's programming from the right way with our children. If you can take this and convey it to them, program them the right way as they grow up, and just have this awareness. Then they don't have to get reprogrammed like us adults do.
Yeah. And as for the listeners that are watching this right now, as you go through the course, I go through a little more detail of how these things work, how to actually put them into play, like today, not tomorrow. Like each one of our segments shows you something, an actionable step to take into play, and then I wrap it up with some takeaways that you'll apply every single day to make sure that now that we're moving, now that the train's rolling down the track, and getting started is the hard part, but let's keep the momentum going. It's very simple things to do every single day to build momentum, so you do not go backwards anymore. Every day, one step further than you were the day before. I
love it, man. You do such a good job of taking these complex thoughts that a lot of us create to be complex in our heads, making them very simple and very actionable. So, dude, I appreciate you being here, man.
Honored to be here.
Excited to continue the journey and help a lot of people on the way.
Sweet.
So many good insights. I'll tell you what, if you're not connected with Pat, you need to be. Make sure you're following him on social media. We'll put all of his connections, all of his handles and everything in the show notes below. If you got some good feedback out of this or good insights out of this, please put it in the comments below. Give me your biggest takeaway in the comments below. And if you know somebody else who needs to hear this, which is probably most of the human population, please share this with them. Please share the link, let them watch the video, pour into some other people, make a deposit into their life, and I'm telling you, it's going to come back tenfold for you too. And it's the insights and the concepts that everybody needs to hear. So again, connect with Pat. Check out his Legacy Wealth Academy masterclass on this stuff, where he dives a lot deeper into a lot of the conversations that we're having. And I'm just excited for what he's got going on. It's a huge honor to have him part of our community, and I hope it helps you guys out. I know it will. So just take it, implement it. Appreciate you guys. Like, subscribe, comment below, and until next time, see you on Spill the Beans.